So, the interesting thing about this episode is that it was influenced by two things that seem completely unrelated, which is a Twitter post that ended up on IG and a holiday. Like, I wouldn't have thought that I'd take both of those things and use them to make an episode, but here we are. And considering that particular post, when I posted it on IG, actually garnered some response from a few guys, did kind of drive all of this, I might as well mention that as well. But, for me to give proper context and to talk about exactly whatever it is that I'm sort of teasing here, I need to do an intro because, why am I man as if I don't start with one? So, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is Denver B. This is a shortened, less edity, no instrumental-y version of the podcast that I usually like to do whenever I'm on break so that I can just air out my thoughts, try to keep things pretty chill as I sort of take some time before I go back to the regular episodes, which should be coming back pretty soon actually. But as I sort of work my way into the time when that happens, there's something that I wanted to discuss for a little bit. So, while I was on IG, I happened to stumble upon a very, very interesting tweet, which I honestly felt like, it was funny enough and relatable enough to guys that I should post it up. So I end up posting it up and it ends up garnering some attention from a few guys. They reached out, they were like, oh shit, this is so relatable and it's something that's affected me as well. Now I'm just going to read the tweet for you guys. So it says, and I quote, "Nothing hurts more than being liked by a baddie when you're broke. Then she's gonna wonder why you barely talk to her. She thinks you're nonchalant, canty, you're nonchalete." End quote. Now, I don't know what nonchalete or canty meant, but I just understood what the guy was trying to say because not only have I experienced this personally, but it's happened to me so many times. And fortunately for you and unfortunately for other guys, it's happened to quite a number of other guys as well. Because when I posted this on my stories, I got a bit of a response from a few guys who are like, yo, this shit is so personal. It even happened very recently. And when I went to the comments of the post itself, it kind of had two batches of people. One that found the post really, really funny, but also quite a number of people who found it very personal and very painful. And you know how it sucks to be a guy and all that. And it was mostly guys that were talking about it. So when I kind of saw it and I was really thinking about, this entire situation and how it affects guys, I also sort of remembered that this is November, which is Men's Mental Health Month. And considering that I'm a guy that talks about guy issues in relationships and relationships from a guy's standpoint, me talking about the challenges that guys go through and, some of the issues that guys go through and some of the feelings that guys have whenever they go through certain challenges should also be on the cards, right? And so, armed with that thought process and armed with some of these comments, I decided to make up a list of things that absolutely suck for guys because guys don't get to talk about the stuff that makes it hard to be a man out here. Like, you are a man, there's a lot of shit that you go through, especially in this world of love, sex, and relationships that, you don't get to talk about as much, or you can only highlight with the boys and probably just laugh about, yet it's something that actually affects you. So as a penis holder in this very interesting world, I came up with about 5 situations where it absolutely sucks to be a guy so that some of y'all can resonate with how guys go through shit and the guys that go through this shit can feel like there's someone who actually understands what they go through. So on the list, the very first thing is, and I know this one is probably on a lighter note, when you can't hit on your coworker because of sexual abuse and sexual harassment policies and biases from HR. Now, this particular case, I know it sounds very lighthearted, and I know there's a lot of people who are like, don't shit where you eat, or don't fuck your coworkers, that's premium tiers, blah, blah. But as a guy, I can say I know those times, and a lot of guys can resonate with all of those moments where, you are in the office, you spend a lot of time in the office, you spend a lot of time with your coworkers or near the particular coworker that you find to be super fire, and you guys can be stealing glances at each other, you guys can be talking to each other a certain way. But the fact that you know that the moment you decide to go and shoot your shot, you could be ending up on the other end of HR's side of sexual harassment and, disciplinary action and shit, you just have to hold back. Now, I know there's a lot of Kenyans in quite a number of companies that don't really take this thing all that seriously, but for a lot of people who are in the private sector, for a lot of people that work for international companies, this is actually a thing because no one wants to be Me Too'd And this is something that'll hold a lot of guys back. And even for the people who say, oh, no, don't fuck your coworkers, oh, don't try to have any relationships at work, y'all probably don't know that a good chunk of relationships actually begin in the office. Bill and Melinda Gates started in the office. Like, there's an entire story around that, which is super interesting and shit, but because of time I can't give it. But there's a lot of great relationships that actually started in the office. It's not all toxic or just fucking around. So that kind of does bum guys out, because not unless if the babe makes the first move, for the most part, your hands, feet, and mouth are all sort of tied. Then the second one is when you realize that your value is attached to your net worth. And I know that this one, probably people might be thinking that, but we've always known this, blah, blah. But let me tell you that the realization of this, when you get done with uni and it just sort of smacks you in the face, is a different feeling in and of itself. I personally went through it. I know a lot of guys go through it, where it's like, it all seems all fine and dandy. It seems all fun and good and everything. Then suddenly it's like you feel like there's no money to do shit. You feel like for you to do anything, it's like you need money. And, people will judge you based off of how you dress, how you look, what car you drive, if you do drive a car. All of those things start to carry some sort of meaning. And it's all because, your value as a guy is very, very tied to how much you're worth, or at least your net worth and all that. And considering that after I finished university, I took a little over a year, before I got a job. So I was, pretty much unemployed during that point. That realization was like an overnight hit. And I kind of had to deal with it through that time. And I know how bad and how painful it is for most guys, most young guys, whenever they go through that. And it's like, you have to find your way. And especially for someone like me who, I moved from a point where I was popular. I could access anyone around the school and everything. And, shit seemed to be going pretty well for me. Moving from that point to a point where it's like no one wants to see you. People don't seem to have time for you. And your value is based off of what it is that you're willing to spend, and how you look and how you dress, and if you're connected to certain people and shit. And even getting those connections themselves still doesn't carry as much value, not unless if you seem like a valuable person. All of that, being tied to your net worth and your network and everything is as in it's an absolute gut punch if you're not ready for it. And I know most young guys aren't. Now, the next situation of when it sucks to be a guy is when you don't have a girl next to you in a place full of couples. Now, this one is the absolute worst, because for the most part, especially when you look at, people who are in new relationships and it's like this new thing that they have and they're all lovey-dovey and with each other, it absolutely sucks. Yes, I get, even with a babe, it's pretty much the same thing, but with guys, I feel like you're almost in the cold, because when a dude is in love and he's caring about his babe, he can kind of leave his boys out to dry for a bit. And it's something that a lot of guys will do. They don't notice that they're doing it, but they do end up doing it. Now, the only time when you as a third wheel can actually end up comfortable is if there's another third wheel in that entire environment, and you guys, pretty much decide to chill and just be homies. And, that kind of alleviates all of that issue of being a third wheel. Or if the couple decides to sort of switch the relationship to a more platonic type because they're with you, which is something that more mature couples can do a lot easier than the newer couples can do. Even then, it's not even a matter of time. It's usually just the two people deciding, what, let's dial down the romance a little bit and be a little bit more friendly. Otherwise, this guy is pretty much going to be left floating on nothing for most of the time. But, that's something that I feel affects both genders. But it is one of those times where, because you don't have a babe with you, or because you're not with any babes, you're sort of feeling like you've been left out hanging to dry. Then the next situation where it genuinely feels like it sucks to be a guy is when you can't hit on a woman because you're broke at that time. This, I guess, I was going to bring it up because of the tweet. This is an absolute gut punch to a guy. And this one I can say from personal experience, because there are those times when, you see a babe, you can see the babe is eyeing you, you want the babe, everything on her is great looking, and you really want to go and holla at shorty, and you yourself want to walk there. But the thing that holds you back, even though every fiber in your being is telling you to go and talk to the babe, is your wallet. Like that feeling is an absolute kick in the plums and the throat at the same time. It absolutely hurts. And you want to know which one is even worse? When the babe is actually interested in you and has expressed interest, and you can't do shit because you know that you're broke, so you know that you can't really hold your own at that time, so you're afraid of actually trying to take things to a certain level with that babe, well, now it's going to require that money that you don't have. Like, this shit affects dudes a lot. Like, if there's one situation where I can say that it's tough being a guy, and it's genuinely there, and it happens to a lot of guys, it's probably this. You can argue about the first 2-3 points, but this one is probably the most straight up situation that I guess a lot of guys kind of go through if you don't have money, or if you've been in situations where you don't have money, but there's a fine babe there and she seems to have some sort of interest in you. Then last but not least, because, this one was coming either way, when nothing is working for you and everyone else is winning. Or, when it seems like nothing is working for you, but for everyone else, it seems like they're winning. Like, this is one of those things that I believe hurts a lot of men, young and old, rich and poor. Like, regardless of what kind of a guy you are, this is one of those things that will hit you today more than ever before. And you can blame social media, you can blame, the fact that IG will always show the best of people and shit like that. But even though you were to take IG out the picture, like, there's a lot of those moments that affect a lot of guys. When you feel like, you are probably jobless, but you have this friend that seems to be changing jobs and is moving to jobs that are offering them more and more money. Or you've been in business for a little bit, and your homie gets into business, and for some reason they seem to be getting job after job, or at least they seem to be getting business after business, work after work, and you're barely able to make ends meet. And even worse still, you guys might even end up being in the same industry, or in the same, sort of sector, or in the same, sort of line of business. Like, that shit usually feels like a gut punch. And, it can be there. It can be your friends that seem to have good relationships, but you can't even get a girl. It can be, your friends that have managed to get a babe to settle down with, and they're even getting married, or they have kids and you don't. Because there are some guys that genuinely do want to have a family and have kids, but, they can't seem to find someone. And a lot of that will always feel like a gut punch. A lot of guys don't like to admit that. And, a lot of times you as a guy will go, you'll see that, and, you'll feel like shit, but you'll keep quiet. But at the end of the day, I want to at least say, to kind of conclude everything, that I understand the pain that you feel. I think a lot of guys understand the kind of pain that I'm mentioning here. Regardless of whether it's point number 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5, or even all of them, or just some. Look, being a guy is actually not a bad experience 100% of the time. Like, there's a lot of great times to be a guy, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit later in a different episode. But, these are a few of the times when it absolutely sucks to be a guy, and there's a lot more where that comes from. But at the end of the day, I want each and every guy that listens to this, and, maybe the girlfriend or a sister or someone that has a close guy friend that is listening to this, to understand that all of these issues that we go through, we're definitely not the first people to go through them, and we probably won't be the last, and we aren't going through them alone all the time. Sometimes these are issues that are affecting multiple other guys, and if there's older people who've gone through these challenges and they've managed to come out the other side pretty well, then there's definitely hope for you. And, you can always reach out to some of them and ask for advice. They might have a tip or two. But even though you might not get the advice, even though you might not get the answers that you want to hear, sometimes it's okay to just talk to someone you can vent to and that you can trust about these issues, even though they're not going to give you the actual solutions to them. And even though you can't talk to someone, no, that's not really your style, and you'd much rather do something like work out or find some sort of a release, then I'd advise that as opposed to holding it in or choosing an outlet that is easily addictive like drugs, alcohol, sex, or even going down an even worse path and choosing suicide, because at the end of the day, none of those options will help you. In short, what I'm trying to say is we understand your pain and we'd be more than happy to help. Not necessarily me, but there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help in any way possible. But so far, thank you for listening all the way till the end. Happy Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. If you want to hit me up on IG, on Facebook, it is at BreakTime. On my side on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next break.